Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Legaltech Around the World. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce David Bushby to you, who is our collaboration partner in this from InCouncil. And David is going to introduce to you this absolutely amazing panel that we have assembled of legal tech gurus, I'm going to call them, from Africa. So this is our visitation with Africa, and I know it's going to be a fantastic visitation at this. These are really some pretty amazing people doing some very amazing things. So I can't wait to hear from them, as I'm sure you can't as well. So I'm going to go away now, but I will be lurking in the background and listening to this as you are as well. Again, delighted to welcome you all, and over to you, David.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to, I guess, the second installment of the Legaltech Around the World series, brought to you, of course, by the College of Law Centre for Legal Innovation. As Terry said, my name's David Bushby from part Legaltech consultancy, part lawyer network InCouncil, and I'm also the producer of the Law Hackers weekly newsletter. So I'll be your host for this series, and joining us today, we've got three fabulous panelists, as Terry said, leading the charge in the legal tech market in Africa, which is, of course, our second stop on this grand tour of the world, the last stop being the Australian and New Zealand market. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. And first up, we've got Alice Namuli Blazovic, dialing in from Kampala, Uganda. She is partner and head of legal technology and innovation at Kentande Sempebwa & Co Advocates, and one of ILTA's top 5 most influential women in legal tech for 2020. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you very much.
We also have, thank you. We also have Leah Molasedi, Head of Business Development at Legal Interact. On the ILTA side of things, for 2022, she is also one of the influential women in legal tech as an honoree. She's joining us from Johannesburg in South Africa. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And finally, we have Adetumande Onibukun, founder of Legal Niger. He is a prolific writer, partner at AOC Solicitors, and a justler. I'll have to ask you about that term, Ade, joining us in from Nigeria. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And just to give our audience a bit more context on where each of you sit in the legal tech market in Africa, I'd love for each of you to give your, I guess, express elevator pitch on what your organization does. Alice, can we start with you, please?
Yes, thank you very much, David. I'm a lawyer. I practice law. I've been practicing law for the last 18 years, and I work with a law firm. It's majorly a corporate law firm. But I had tech and innovation. I'm very enthusiastic about tech and innovation. And yeah, so we also host the Legal Innovation Hub, which is a space that we will set up to collaborate, to provide a safe space for lawyers and technologists to create or innovate for the law. That's it.
Fantastic. Leah, what does your company do?
Thank you, David. So I'm a lawyer by training, but I always say I'm a legal tech junkie by accident. So I work at Legal Interact, which is a legal tech company that builds legal tech solutions for the legal community. So it's spread across different facets of the community. So from practice management software for practicing lawyers to in-house type of legal solutions like contract management, matter management type of solutions. So we're everywhere.
Okay, great. And finally, Ade, tell us about Legal Niger and yourself.
Oh, thank you so very much, David. Once again, it's great to be here. So I'm a lawyer as well. I live and work in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm partner at AOC and I'm founder at Legal Niger. What we do at Legal Niger is we're making access to justice easier for Nigerians by providing them tools by which they can find a lawyer, get contracts, resolve their disputes via ODR, and we have a chatbot that allows them to get legal information as well.
Fantastic. Great elevator pitches, everyone. Nice and crisp and short, the way we like them. So I guess I wanted to kick off with some questions, and some of them will be quite common that I'd like to ask across all of the different parts of the world that we visit. And the first one is just really setting the scene for the legal tech landscape there with some headlines. What's going on? What are some big headlines that are happening at the moment in your part of the world? And Alice, I might give you first go at that one.
What's happening? Well, we just had the Global Legal Tech Hackathon in Uganda, where we had different, how can I say, participants from Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. But anyway, yeah, it was very exciting. That was last week. It ended on Sunday, but it's still actually ongoing because there are different phases. But the first phase ended on Sunday. So yeah, it was very exciting. I'll tell you more about that. Generally, on the legal tech space in Africa, I would say that most of the startups that we have, most of the legal tech startups are still in a development or medium stage, meaning some of them have been able to move and raise a lot of funding and moved to from startup to medium stage, and are pretty much like yet to scale to the rest of Africa. You would find that out of let me say 60% of the startups that we have, the legal tech startups on the continent, they're still struggling at actually no, not even 60%, 80% of the startups on the continent are still at the startup stage, and most of the legal tech. We have two components. One is startups, which are focusing more on legal tech tools that lawyers can use or law firm can use, or like law or legal businesses. And then the other component is access to justice. We find that the startups that focus more on access to justice get more funding, have got more, I guess, traction than the other component. And most of the legal tech tools or platforms that are being used by lawyers are, I would say, it's a mixture of regional and international brands. Most of the legal techies are below the age of 30. That's pretty much the average age. And the legal hotspots in legal tech hotspots in Africa, it's Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, some of that. What else can I share?
I was just going to, we'll definitely get onto mapping the market a little bit. I was just keen, out of any of the fundraisers that you mentioned, do you or any of the other panelists can you point to any fundraisers that have just happened, or exits, or anything that's a bit headline grabbing?
In Nigeria particularly, there hasn't been any, shall I say, headlining fundraising, particularly because legal tech is actually just growing here as well. And we're trailing far behind fintech. So there's a tech explosion in Nigeria now, but about 90% of that attention is going to fintech, right? And legal tech is just trying to claw at about 3 to 5% of that attention at this time. So there are a lot of hubs that are coming together now, and there are a lot of startups that are starting to go into the legal tech space. However, we're still, like my friend here said, we're still at the nascent stage, and there's really no, shall I say, headline grabbing fundraising that has happened in the last few months. However, what we've seen is we have communities that have come together and are kind of like having competitions, having like hubs which are supporting legal tech platforms. For instance, recently the Bar Association itself had a competition where a couple of startups, got some form of grants, right, at the end of the day. But that is just what we are seeing at this time. We're not seeing like major investors really coming into the space. That doesn't mean they're not around. They're around and they're seeing that there's a lot of potential here, but we've not just gotten to that point where they've started making big investments into the tech space right now as regards to legal tech.
Agreed. I mean, it's the same with us. I think the last biggest raise we had was back in 2020 from Briefco. So in South Africa, if you want to challenge your fee structure and so forth, you have to go to the master's office and have it assessed and so forth. So they handle that particular process and help firms actually aggregate their fees and so forth. So they raise, I think, about 100 USD. So that translates to about 1 million rand in South African rands. But that was like the biggest raise in the legal tech space. So it hasn't been that active, but there are, associations that are assisting, but they're not strictly focused on legal tech solutions.
What about outside fundraising and more on the regulatory side? I think, Alice, we chatted a couple of weeks ago and you'd mentioned some regulations around e-filing that had come through.
Yeah, so this came about, I would say post-COVID, and during, it all started rather in COVID, a whole proposal and drafting. We were in a lockdown and we're not allowed to appear in court physically. So the judiciary had come up with pretty much just a very ordinary way of, rudimentary way of us appearing. I mean, you just go through via Zoom and that is it. But now we have an e-filing management system and also virtual, platforms that have been specifically created for court hearings. No more physical, no more manual filings. Everything is online. No more payments, no more physical payments or payment in bank. Everyone uses a platform. And of course, that also has changed the regulation specifically in regard to that. That is only like filing systems and court appearances. Before, I mean, the law had to change because we had to catch up basically with the times of COVID. And mainly this came out first with the practice rules, and now it's all been engraved in our laws. So it's very exciting time, and this was actually launched early this year in January.
And is that a government created or developed platform?
It's all it's all government. So it's mandatory, and you have no way out. Everything has to be online from A to Z.
Yeah, great. Well, just more broadly, aside from headlines, we started to talk about the market there a bit, and just to try and map this out, I had a couple of questions, mainly, I mean, just to sort of dovetail into, I think one of you were talking about different sort of regions within the African continent, and how do we think about the legal tech market? What are the main ways to think about the market there? Is it country by country, or is it region by region? How do we best think about it if we're coming from outside the African market?
I think, it's really dependent on the people who are building. So the founders, in terms of how they want to scale the solutions. But most of the founders that I interact with are a bit more continental in their perspective in terms of how they wish to scale their solutions. And you also need to look in terms of the type of resources that are available. So you'll find, for example, right now, the Hill has been very active on the continent. So for example, in Southern Africa, they're cutting it. So we will no longer be part of the Hague Institute of Innovation in Law. So that obviously might be, will really have a great impact in terms of the type of access to justice solutions that are coming through. in the legal tech space. So, there are a myriad of factors that actually impact how we view it. But on the roll, because I think people actually recognize that legal tech is actually very scalable, that their vision is typically very big. Or maybe it's just an entrepreneurial thing, because you think big, you want to take over the world. So, yeah.
Can I go on that?
Go ahead, Alice.
Yeah. Personally, I think, like I mentioned earlier, there are very few tech startups that have gotten to, like, I would say, the development stage, and they are having a big challenge in terms of scaling. Leah mentioned about Hill. Yeah, Hill has supported so many. Actually, I think most of the legal tech startups we have who are focusing on access to justice are being supported by Hill. There is Microsoft here and there, and in Uganda, our government and some development agencies like DFID, we have these are a local development agencies. They have come out and really greatly supported the access to justice tech platforms, but they are only able to operate within their jurisdictions, specifically like Uganda, or I would say Kenya or South Africa and Nigeria. There's some kind of a challenge there. We are trying to figure out how actually we can be able to scale the technologies from all these startups, how they can actually scale to like different markets. There are some I know too who are operating within like East Africa, but at very, very minimal level. That is, of course, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda, but a very, very minimal level, meaning still if the best in Uganda, they just have, I would say, very like minimal impact. And then Nigeria is a very big market. So it's just one of those things where if you started something, I personally think that you can easily scale in terms of numbers because they definitely the number. There's a very big struggle when it comes to funding and attracting major funding to help you scale on the rest of the continent. And why, like I told you, very few people, very few investors, I think are willing to go into this space. I don't know, it's easy to attract money in the fintech space, but not as much in the legal tech space. Or maybe what actually some startups are doing is to collaborate, but no, earlier on, David, you're asking any MAs, they're pretty much just in the pipeline. The best thing actually that we see that could happen is some kind of mergers and acquisitions, coming up, where you have like maybe say a global brand or a brand from there's some brands from Israel, Tel Aviv, who are trying to get into the market, but not significantly.
Yeah, one thing I was looking at, just trying to get a feel for the numbers of legal tech startups there are across Africa. And Leah, you'd sent me a resource that was more of a new law listing. And I did my best I got through about 13 pages worth of, it's 5 on each page, there's about 65 listed there, but probably half of them were more new law, sort of maybe law firms, or they might have been consultancies, or just outside legal, more on the reg tech space. So that's a very rough 50%, I think. So I sort of put the count for legal tech at about 35, but of course there'd be others that are not listed in there, and then a little bit of Google searching around also talked around a number of about 45 thereabouts. And so that was kind of what I thought is a rough overall number of the legal tech startups. And because I'd gone through all of those pages, I was just having a bit of a scan, and I did notice, quite a few, like you've said, access to justice startups, DIY sort of law for consumers and small businesses, legal information sites. I'd love your sort of view on this as well, because you're in that space, but also quite a few in the practice management and particularly document automation point solutions. And seemingly in the document automation or practice management, seemingly scaling outside of Africa. So with offices globally and with seemingly pretty mature products as well. And from a market perspective, those products can be exported all around the world because they solve the same problems in the same way. Nothing particular, I don't think, to the African market. But yeah, are there any thoughts on your end on that?
Yes, most definitely. So in regards to the numbers, definitely we don't have so many legal tech platforms in Nigeria. We have some that are starting. We have every day we have new ones that are coming. But like I said earlier, you know, compared to fintech, we really don't have the numbers, right? That's one. Then two, in regard to solutions that are being provided and those that can scale even internationally, we have very few of those as well. What we have in Nigeria really is kind of like legal research software, right? That has been how the market started, really. Legal research softwares, and where people used to search for their case law, used to search for research on decided cases, and it was used by both, it is being used by both the lawyers and judges, right? And that is great. And even most of the startups in Nigeria that are in the legal tech space, you know, most of them started as legal research softwares. And it's after that that they try to pivot into other areas of the market, right? Now, in regards to practice management, off the top of my head, really, I know just about one, and they've been around for about 3 to 5 years now, but they've also not been able to scale. I know they opened in Ghana recently, but I don't know how much success they've had in Ghana already. In regards to should I say, documentation and how you can put that up in an automated system like we're doing, we're also very few startups that are doing that as well. So Legal Niger, for instance, now we have that, and I think 1 or 2 platforms, but really in Nigeria, I can say we're about the only people who are at the forefront of this, right? And a number of people who have come together to do such businesses are kind of like firms, right, who offer to build these documents for you or to create this document for you, but there's really no automated process that helps you to get the document done like we do. So yes, in regards to numbers, it's still very, very little. In regards to exporting out of Africa to, say, maybe the US or something, now there's a little bit of problem for legal startups in Nigeria in that regard, in the sense that one, we've not even gotten a grasp of our market yet. You know, we've not even gotten a large market share here yet. So it's what I think most people are trying to do is just focus on that first, you know, try to take over the local community space first before we even try thinking of going to the US. Then also there's a little difference in law with should I say, Nigerian law, and particularly laws in the US, which of course can be divided into states. So they have like a number of, should I say, specified, or should I say more like specific, you know, tools or laws or clauses that are particularly related to them. And in Nigeria, right, we don't have that. So there's a difference between the Nigerian law and the US law. So any legal tech startup that wants to go to the US now will be thinking, oh, do I need to create a new set of products? You know, and that might be a bit too financially consuming for them at this point. So the startup focus really right now is in Nigeria, is in Africa, and just trying to break ground in the local market before we think of exporting as well. That doesn't mean there are no 1 or 2 businesses or that can export their tools. For instance, like you just said, now those that are into practice management, that can work, right? Because the tools are basically universal in nature. But for other companies that are actually bringing legal solutions, like what I said earlier, like documentation automation, you know, like ODR and things like that, then we're still stuck with just trying to capture the market size in Nigeria or in Africa at this time before thinking of expansion. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the subject matter.
But I think another factor, that plays into this is one, like the environment, if it's enabling, in order for us to scale, but it's also about the type of solutions that we're building. So when you look across from a SaaS solution and an enterprise solution, it becomes quite difficult for you to actually scale enterprise type of solutions. When you consider the costing around it, when you consider the implementation process that is involved with it, whereas if legal tech startups are looking or building more type of SaaS solutions, then that can be easily scalable, not only beyond the countries that we're in, but also globally. So maybe it's a thing that we also need to look into, when we speak to startups and so forth, because that can be a hindrance.
What do you mean by the difference between like enterprise and SaaS? Are you meaning enterprise like specifically on premises?
Yes.
Or because there's definitely you're starting to see enterprise type software that is absolutely SaaS and delivered on cloud and not on prem anymore, which I would hope.
The problem is more so from a customizable perspective. So you'll find that there's solutions that are built for an organization's types of workflow, right? And one organization may not necessarily work the same as the next. So that becomes a huge problem from a scaling perspective. Even though, the workflows have been created and so forth, there's certain nuances that still need to be made provision for. So that can become a factor, because ultimately lawyers, and I say this being a lawyer, I'd probably stick to what I know if you are introducing me to something new that is going to make it very difficult for me to get accustomed to. So I'll stick to my old thing. I'm used to it. Yes, it's a drag, but for me, it's working. So if the solution is easier to use, the implementation process is smoother, good, then I'm all for it. So sometimes that can be an issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to add first to what Adedumande said, and then add to Leah. One of the challenges actually I've seen, of course, talking to the would-be potential like equity, funders or investors, when you think about Africa and you want to to come in or help, most jurisdictions we looked at, like they're developing jurisdictions. So the focus is put on how do we make sure first that there's access to justice to everyone. So that attracts more investors, because everyone, the first thing is that how do we get as more people as possible to access justice? And when you have a tool that is able to reach out to every person, every citizen in the corner of a country, that is more I guess it would be more exciting to any investor or development partner. And that is why so much actually of the funding is more focusing on access to justice. One time 2 years ago, when we were very excited about an online dispute platform using blockchain, I was talking to some lawyers from, I think, Norway and Sweden, and they just couldn't understand how this is actually exciting. Like, you mean it's you have problem. When I was talking about the solutions it's going to, to come up with in Africa, meaning it's going to be more cost efficient, more transparent. They don't understand. You don't have a system which is not transparent. You understand? And this, for us here, those are like major problems, because most of our systems are bogged down with corruption. They're too it's too costly for an ordinary citizen. So actually, very few people have access to justice, unless of course you're, like the middle class and the people, of course, the rich who can appreciate, or who are able even to pay themselves out of trouble and cause a lot of backlog in the system. But yeah, that actually I thought I could bring that about I've got that as feedback that when someone wants to come in, like for example, in a country like Uganda, they don't understand how they would get into fundraising or in injecting a lot of money in a startup that is focusing more on lawyers, helping lawyers and law firms, as opposed to yet, I would say, if you have a country where more than 80% are not able to access justice, and there's this particular tool that is able to reach out to someone in the remotest part of the country, trust me, someone will definitely go for the access to justice. Yeah. And then about what Leah, said, why lawyers are very comfortable in their zone and using what technology they've always used. So I'm on that other side. Leah is I'm the client for Leah on that. And that is genuinely the feedback is that if things have worked out for us for the longest time, you understand, and lawyers have been able to earn all the money they want with the technologies, the very basic technologies they've always used, they don't see much, they don't see why they should actually invest in a very expensive platform, yet what actually they're using or the way they were doing things still works. And
yeah.
And then lastly is that also the client. Sorry, I think I missed you there. And then lastly is about also the clientele. Most clients actually still are very like manual and very like if physical. It depends, of course, on the clientele you're working on as a lawyer or a law firm. Some of the clients still want things to be done, you understand, like the manual way, come to me, we sign these documents, we attest to this. And I'm like, I don't have to come to you. We can use DocuSign. I can use HelloSign. I can send you documents. But some clients are like, no. Yeah, so it's you find that there's a bigger percentage of lawyers and law firms who are still feeding a clientele that actually still appreciates a system without so much sophistication.
One point I was going to make is through the series, one of the aims is to surface some differences between the different regions of the world. And I think that access to justice theme that keeps coming up in our conversation, it's such a predominant issue. And you're saying that if that's where the investors are more likely to go, it's where the startups are more likely to get funded. I mean, that's probably quite different to where on the first episode we talked in the Australian and New Zealand market, and the trend seems to be towards business-to-business tools, productivity tools for lawyers, whether they be in-house or in law firms. That's where the lion's share of the action, I think, has been for quite some time. I'd probably say the same for the US, although US in some of its earlier unicorn, real takeoff legal tech startups, LegalZoom, Avo, that type of thing. Avo, LegalZoom, it advertises on TV, and this is kind of DIY, affordable legal services where you might not even need a lawyer to get some legal work done. So there's an access to justice element there. But still, I would even say, at least from what I've seen in our market in Australia and also in the US, it's more the B2B players that get the lion's share of funding, I would think. So quite a difference there.
David, while you're there, I think another factor that we need to consider, particularly for the B2B, those clients have the funds to pay, whereas our typical target markets in the access to justice space don't necessarily have the funds to pay you. So even though your solution is probably a bit more scalable, but you're running a numbers game. So instead of charging, like $500 an hour, you're charging like $50 an hour. So the numbers that you need to ramp up is a huge factor. And then secondly, you also need to educate the market that you're trying to solicit to use your service, because most of them, and which Alice correctly stated, they still don't view lawyers online as a thing, even though the pandemic helped a bit in terms of normalizing the fact that you can actually consult with people online, there is that perception that a lawyer is only good if they're expensive or if they have books, big books behind them, or, so it is a hindrance. So from a funding perspective, it makes sense for people who are investing, but from a user perspective, this really impacts the sustainability perspective of it. So even though the B2B may not be getting the necessary funds, but if they get enough clients, they're a bit more sustainable because they're getting in more money, they get more work, so they can self-run themselves. But from an investment perspective, obviously it's a different conversation. Yeah,
that was the curious thing is I find in the A to J space that you are often providing services at low cost or for free on a pro bono type basis. So I've never thought there'd been as much of a focus on money and growth and revenue and traction and all those things that startups go for, which I would have thought attracted the funding. So I think it's just an interesting nuance in your market that the A to J gets the lion's share of attention and funding in the space. I also wanted to just ask, just separately to the actual legal tech startups themselves, what else is in the ecosystem? And I'm talking about innovation hubs such as the one that you're involved with, Alice, and I think that's kind of set up by your law firm. Are there other similar hubs like that, or maybe universities or education institutions that really support legal tech? And I assume there's probably no specific VC or angel network that provides funding, but let's just put the startups aside for a moment and talk about any other pieces of the ecosystem in Africa that make it what it is.
Actually, the hub, like I said, it was founded by a firm, and it's actually not located at the farm. It's located at the Innovation Village. So this is a very big space where there's a lot of going on, and there's so many startups. We just thought we could be station it there so that you're closer to the other people who are in the ecosystem. And when you're innovating, you understand, you're not in some kind of silos. So talking to the people in the ecosystem, and that is how we came up with a venue in the Innovation Village. So it is within the Innovation Village. Anything like that within the country? No. I know some law firm in Kenya. It's called Anjawala. It has a legal tech hub, but I've not heard of any of the products they've come up with. Most probably it's more like within the law firm, and they're just trying to test out a few products within the lawyers. But then for us, it's open to the public. Any lawyer from whatever university can come and use that space. We target mainly young lawyers and students. The other thing we also do is work with universities around the country. So we collaborate with all basically higher institutions of learning, legal higher institutions of learning, because they are the ones, we realize that it's the young people who are interested in this. Any lawyer above 40, 35, they're like, sorry, Alice, let's try this in the next century. So for us, we are really focusing more on the student, and actually it works out because they have I think a lot of space, and they're willing, you understand, to get into this space, and they're also willing to share the legal space with other professionals. Lawyers were not trained to share space. We are like, if you understand, you're like, okay, this is my library, this is how I work, my clients come in. That's the space we know. You do not know how to say, oh my goodness, there's someone here, he's a data something. You're like, who are you? So this is a space also to nurture that and say, actually we can work together, we can collaborate together, you want to innovate for the law, let me tell you actually what works. Because for the longest time, most of the innovators who are innovating for us, for the legal profession, had not really understand what works for us. And that's why some of the tools actually backfired in the beginning, because the innovators were innovating. I want to innovate for the law, but they really don't understand the lawyer's mind, right? So pretty much that's what the hub is about. It's all for the public to use. Anyone around the world can use it, and we've got participants from. We also collaborate with different associations, network Africa associations. So we've had people from Nigeria, startups from Nigeria work with us, Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania. Anything specifically to what we are doing, I've not heard of.
I should have asked the question. Is there a peak legal tech body in any of your countries or other countries that you know of, or for
Yes.
the African continent?
Yes, so we have, so for example, tomorrow, I started this thing on Twitter Spaces called Legaltech with Leah. Actually, Ada was there on the first run. And so tomorrow, actually, I'm having a conversation with one of the founders of the South African Legal Tech Network. So he creates an ecosystem together with one of his other co-founders. He's actually the co-founder of BriefCo that I mentioned earlier. And they create a space, literally a safe space for legal tech startups to come through, get mentorship, advice, maybe connect. Because sometimes the biggest thing, particularly in South Africa, is more of a network perspective. Because you know what you want to build, you have this in your head, but you don't know the right people. And sometimes all it really amounts to is just someone connecting you to the right person. So we're having a conversation and just drawing back to the ecosystem. So for example, UCT, I really have to, they have a very special place in my heart, the University of Cape Town. They offer like coding classes for lawyers. They are offering obviously some of my own courses on legal tech, but they also have a hub. They call it the Africa Law Tech Hub, where they take in also, legal tech startups and, try to nurture them, empower them and so forth. So there is like sprouts of things that are happening, particularly in my region. I think people do want to help us, but we need more money.
The other association I can talk about, sorry, the other association
I was just going to say that.
The African Legal Tech Network. It has like members all over Africa. So you sign up, subscribe, and then, they nurture conversations around, legal tech in different countries. So before COVID, we used to have like conferences in different jurisdictions, but now it's just going to start again. It's called Africa Legal Tech Network.
Yeah. I was just going to say that sadly in Nigeria, we don't have any of such hubs now that are specifically focused on legal tech. So the biggest supporter of legal tech in Nigeria, like Leah said, if I would answer that, will be the IL, right? And outside them, there's really nobody that is driving legal tech like they are, or that is supporting the community like they are. There are also no hubs, sadly, that are focused on legal tech at the moment. Like I said, we are just trying to exist within like 3 to 5% of the space. Fintech is what everybody's talking about in Nigeria at this time. And but in regards to lawyers particularly, right, I've noticed a trend where a number of young lawyers, and this goes also with what I think Leah and Kristen said earlier, a lot of young lawyers are now thinking of pivoting into the tech space. So I'm sure that by the time we have a lot more of them in that space, right, then of course we might have a hub, we might have some form of support, we might have some form of community where people come together, and build each other and grow together or help support each other. But currently at this time, we don't have that. And I think it's something that we need to look into as well. Yeah.
Aded, you mentioned HEAL again, and it was mentioned earlier in the conversation, and I'm vaguely aware of it, but I don't see too much of it in my part of the world. Can you just quickly explain for the audience, what is that and how does that support? It sounds like just particular countries on the continent, not Africa holistically.
Well, I'm not sure if they're in Africa holistically, but I know that they have a lot of business in West Africa. And I also know that they've done some things in South Africa as well. I just cannot speak for other parts of Africa aside those two. So IL is concerned, it's, should I say, partnered with the A or from the A. And what they've been doing in the past 2-3 years in Nigeria, for instance, is they've been having incubation programs for legal tech startups. So there's been like how it usually starts. There's a competition, and people have to submit their ideas, and a couple of people are selected and are put through an incubation program. Also, the startups that are selected also have the opportunity to pitch their deck, and get some form of grants, sometimes 10,000 euros or 20,000 euros, as the case may be. So they've been doing that for about, like that I know, for about 3 to 4 years now. And luckily, I was one of the people who got selected to participate in the incubation program last year. And yeah, so they've been doing a great job. But like I said, it's just them that I've seen in this space. Really, they're like the only ones that I really support in this space. Yeah, in Nigeria particularly. Yeah.
I guess we have talked a bit about some challenges, but aside from the ones that we'd mentioned, quite common to a lot of startups is that scalability, but particularly it sounds like in Africa, it's a big problem. Are there other challenges that you see or headwinds, or even on a positive note, real opportunities in your part of the world for legal tech?
If I could say something about that, opportunities, most definitely. So there are a lot of B2C opportunities and B2B as well. So for instance, I think someone was saying earlier, Africa still has this problem, access to justice, right? And our legal systems are still not as transparent as they should be. So a lot of people are beginning to question the system and saying, look, things should not be so expensive. Things should be readily available to the average person without having to be maybe middle class or rich. Right. So in that regard, there's a lot of opportunity. So that is some of the things we are trying to capitalize on at Legal Niger, because we believe that, with proper access to justice, of course, we believe there'll be a better society. So we're trying to, get the word out there. And yes, we do need funding. Like you said, yes, funding is a big issue in regards to scaling. Funding is a big issue in regards to growing, and also getting that market fit, getting people to be comfortable with the solutions that we are providing. So we've also seen a couple of lawyers who are not so comfortable with the B2C side of things, right? Because I'm a lawyer as well, so I understand how they feel. We've been used to, when you come to our firms, we charge you a high fee to draft a document for you. But here, Legal Nigeria is doing something where we have slashed the price of those fees by almost 95%. Right, and a lot of practitioners are not so happy with that, because they feel like we're taking the market away from them. But what I keep trying to explain to them is technology is the only way we can scale and make access to justice available to everybody, right? Because what we've been doing so far has not been working. That's why we have the system that is broken now. But with technology, I believe that a lot can be done in order to, make the system work, to make it work better. And we also had the experience from COVID, right, where we cannot go to courts and we cannot do hearings. So we have to do the virtual hearing thing. But the problem we are having with that is the momentum that came with that immediately after COVID, right, has waned completely. So it's just out of like the 36 states in Nigeria, right, it's just about 1 or 2 of them, aside from the federal courts, that is the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal. But the state high courts, right, just about 1 or 2 of them have continued to push on virtual hearings. All the others are just, not really abandoned, but they're not really paying attention to it as they should, when COVID happened. So in regards to BDC, in regards to ODR platforms, the people that are now looking for ODR platforms will say, look, can I use that to resolve my dispute? People don't want to go back to the lawyers anymore because of the high cost of drafting, especially when you're instructing the lawyer to draft a contract. So they're saying, look, is there any option out there for me to get a contract? So we are new in the markets. We're trying to introduce ourselves to people out there and let them know that this service is not available for them, right? And there's still a little bit of, let's say, skepticism And people are just trying to be careful and say, oh, I've not used this before. How does this work? Is this as efficient as getting a lawyer, to just draft it for me? And people are still in that comfortable space that they are, that place that they know, where let me call this lawyer and tell the lawyer this is what I want. Or the lawyer sits down with me and we draft the contract together, or I tell him what I want to be in the contract, or he sends me an email and I review the contract. People are still comfortable with that. But when you tell them there's a system to automate, they're just a bit skeptical, like, really, how does this work? Because it's new to them. But the opportunity is there, right? And I believe that any company in Nigeria that's able to actually sell its services well, we actually go a long way in not only scaling, but in becoming quite profitable as well. In the B2B side, like you said earlier, that has also been the case in Nigeria. They have had the larger market share. In fact, we don't still have so many companies in that space in Nigeria, but we have quite a few. But they are the ones that are able to make enough money to, keep themselves in business and also be profitable. But B2C, we need more attention there, most definitely, in Nigeria.
Yeah. Alice or Leah, just a chance to answer that question quickly. We do have a couple of questions that have come through, so I wouldn't mind getting to those as well.
I think one of the challenges I can talk about, I think it's both, of course, the lawyers themselves, then the market. Some of the innovations we've had, that is in startups, the startups they have faced is when you go out to the market and you have a very affordable product. Two things, and this is actually very true. Where if I go online, I go online and say, oh, I need maybe a contract. You just want like a template or a precedent, right? That could be easy. But remember, law also has there's the emotional side of it, right? So I can easily I want a contract, employment contract, that's easy. But when it gets into more detailed things, like if I'm a business, as a businesswoman, I would want to actually talk to a lawyer and get that information that I'm doing something and my lawyer is aware of it, as opposed to a system just going online and like, oh yeah, I got this and I'm on my own now. Then the other thing is that if I use automated services, what happens in case actually the advice that I was provided turns out to not be either, what happens if that service turns out to be like invalid, or usually if you go to a lawyer and misadvises you, you go to a law counsel. Here, for an automated system, where do you go? So people are questioning who is behind that system that will be liable in case something goes wrong. And that is now a challenge that I think this is feedback I could give to Adedemunda, is that the market wants to know more. Who are you? So if you have a product by a lawyer who has already, this is now what we're saying, who has already a reputation on the market and is saying, I am behind this platform, you understand? Then the market would listen. But I am a businesswoman and I would want a reputable lawyer, you understand? Someone who has been tested to represent my company, not some some machine, someone is like, oh yeah, guess what? You want this, we'll give it to you. And also, like I said, there's an emotional side of it. I spoke with my lawyer because so many people, it's like you go to a doctor, you could be actually sick, right? But then you go and talk to your doctor and get better because you talk to your doctor, right? Even this whole thing of, as opposed to, I talk to some AI, like some bot, like you won't get that kind of, satisfaction. So there's still that. The market itself is just not able to understand. And then lastly, when you talk about, when you make them very cheap, you've said you've cut down 95%. Corporations, big corporations, because they would actually even be penalized to say, oh, what did you use? Okay, and things that didn't go well and you thought that you had cut down. So you are trying to cut down this trouble. They would literally be penalized for that. But I'm just thinking, how would this work? This is actually something, this is what we're trying to test. If a law firm, like the law firm I work for, it's been around for the last 60 years. When they come up with their own like internal automated service, like you have a law firm, which is, has physical space and everything. But then you have a virtual platform where you actually are able to provide spaces, rather services to clients, they will use that platform. So one of the things actually you could do as startups is collaborate with law firms and use the law firms to actually use the platforms. That's what we are now trying to get in, because anyone would believe that services from my law firm, you've been around for 60 years, you're not going to run off, right? If you bring this virtual service, everyone is easily going to believe you, as opposed to some guy who's just left law school and he also pretty much really doesn't understand liability very much.
Yeah, there's just so much in that answer, Alice, and I am conscious of time, and if it is okay, I do want to put this question through because it has been asked, and I will get you, Leah, to have first go if you don't mind, and also you can chime in on the challenges and opportunities as well. But just to answer this question first, one question has come in about any adaptation of adoption, I should say, of other legal tech solutions that are not locally made. Have I guess the US is probably where the lion's share of this technology has come in. Is there much adoption for legal tech outside of the country?
Yeah, in South Africa particularly. So more so for your big law firms, so our top 5. So our biggest competitors are not necessarily local tech startups. Our biggest competitors are foreign legal tech solutions that are coming through. That's a huge challenge for us because obviously they have the budget, and corporations, multinationals, those types of in-house legal teams also have the money to actually leverage off of foreign types of solutions. So from also an adoption perspective, they are more receptive to different types of legal tech solutions, because I think purely by the nature of them being in business, in the corporate space, they understand the importance of efficiency. They understand things, having to be done in a certain way, automation, the benefits, of those type of key concepts that legal tech solutions bring, in a business. Whereas for law firms, there's a whole education that needs to happen. And the same can be said for the traditional legal market too. You have to constantly train and say, hey, I'm a real lawyer, trust me. You can, for law firms, hey, it's actually better for you to make use of the system because it'll help you in X, Y, Z. But we've seen a greater uptake from more corporate types, in-house legal teams and so forth.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes.
Can I just add on to that? What Leah has said is actually very true. Our top law firms, okay, let me say 5, 10, they all use foreign solutions. And I'm sure the reason why is because they understand efficiency. When if I'm talking about our law firm, to take a chance on some legal tech startup, and then the whole thing just collapses, this is not something they can take. You understand? So it's the level of efficiency, the level of I guess trust, and also why they have the leverage is most of these international firms, they've been researching about the legal profession, or they have had different products they have had in the past for lawyers. So diverting and providing a product specifically now to enhance the way lawyers do, it makes it much easier. But remember, they already know the mindset of the lawyers. They've been in the legal profession for so many years producing all these products, so it becomes much easier for them. When you talk about Thomson Reuters, no one is going to doubt Thomson Reuters product. We are also using Luminous, which somehow had definitely also different products. But anyway, I thought I just mentioned that and add on to what Leah has said. It's very true. We have so many foreign brands on the market.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be one thing in common with everywhere we visit around the world. But look, we will have to wrap there. I'm sorry, we are a bit out of time. And with that, I might have to just pass back to Terry for final remarks and closing.
Yeah, well, absolutely a huge thank you. It's a conversation that I feel we could have actually done double time on because there's so many things to talk about. But I know all of you are really active on LinkedIn and Twitter, so folks can reach out to you and continue those conversations. And really that's part of what David and I hope this series will bring, which is people that others can go to and expand their network with, and ask those questions after these sessions finish. So just really, really encourage you to do that, because I know all of you are very open to it. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for attending. Our next stop is in the United Kingdom on the 27th of April. So we'll be back to chat about legal tech there as well. But for now and for today, sadly, thank you very much again, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Addie. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you. Thank you,
So
guys.
much, guys. Such a pleasure to be here.